Hello and welcome to the June Recreational Astronomy Night Meeting online edition of the RASC Toronto Centre. My name is Paul Markov, coming to you from Markham, Ontario. And aside from introducing the speakers, I also search for presentations for upcoming meetings. So if you have a presentation in mind, please get in touch with me. We have openings for the August and later meetings. Our meetings are held on the first Wednesday of each month. Before we begin with the presentations, I'd like to thank our technical team comprised of Andrew and Betty Reed, Blake Nancaro, Emma Seabrook-Ward-Legros, and Enya Cholucci. Thank you guys for making these meetings possible. We have 3 presentations this evening as usual, and I expect will be done around 9:30, if not earlier. And the speakers are as follows. Chris Vaughan will present the sky this month, followed by Stuart, Heggie, Astrophotography, Deep Sky, and Skyscapes. And then we're going to have Arushi and Artash Nath talking to us about simulating hypothetical asteroid impact scenarios, learnings from the 2021 Planetary Defense Conference. And finally, Tom Luton, our president, will deliver the announcements. If you have questions, please enter them in the YouTube chat box, and Emma will ask the speakers the questions on your behalf. Also, if you're attending the meeting for the first time or even second or third time, please say hello through the YouTube chat box and let us know where you're from. So I think we're all set to begin with presentations. Go ahead, Chris, with the sky this month.
Thanks, Paul, and hello, everybody. I'm coming to you from beautiful Thornhill, Ontario, which is actually within the city of Markham. So Paul and I are neighbors in a sense. And I'm just outside the Toronto city limits. So you'll see that a number of my my stellarium, when I demo it, is based in Thornhill, but for all intents and purposes, it's Toronto. So don't be alarmed. You'll see the same thing that I see up here in Thornhill, north of Steeles. All right, so I'm going to cover the sky this month for the period of June 2nd to July 7th. So it's about 5 weeks. And this block of time is that fortunate good news, bad news scenario. We've got more and more clear skies, but we're also bracketing the summer June solstice, which means that we have those late sunsets and those short periods of darkness. So let's head on. Before I get into the observing part, let's cover a little bit on space exploration and a few of the launches that you can look out for. Now, I've prepared a set of notes for this talk that I'll upload to rascto.ca with a PDF, which has got more details. But for now, let's look at a couple of the launches that I picked up the list. So tomorrow at around 1:30 p.m., we've got the Falcon 9 rocket launching from Kennedy Space Center with the Dragon 2 spacecraft on a cargo mode. So no humans on board, just cargo. But those launches are great opportunities to get out your binoculars and look up your space station passes and see if you can see the cargo ship chasing the ISS across the sky. So that's a fun one. On June 10th, we've got China launching astronauts into space. So they recently launched their Tianhe-1 space station. And on the 10th of June, they're going to send multiple astronauts to rendezvous and dock with it. I'm not sure how long they're staying, if they are staying, but anyway, that's to keep an eye on. And this is, by the way, this picture in the background is the Chinese space station mock-up. And then at mid-month on the 15th, we have the U.S. Air Force and Northrop Grumman launching a classified spy satellite cargo. So I always like to mention those. And then sometime later in June or perhaps early July, we have a Soyuz rocket lifting off from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan with another delivery to the ISS. Whoops. And that one, again, is something you could keep an eye out for. Basically, within a day or so after launch, if you get an ISS pass, an International Space Station pass, watch for that little cargo ship chasing across the sky. So let's get into some observing. If you want to act and contribute to citizen science and help us map light pollution, you can participate in the Globe at Night program. And in 2021, during the period I'm discussing tonight, we actually have 2 dark moonless periods. So we're into one right now. And these 2 moonless periods I've got circled here, and the focus there is to head outside wherever you are and observe the constellation of Hercules and report back to Globe at Night how many of the stars you can make out in the constellation. And if you visit globeatnight.org, You can print out the sky charts that they provide you with comparative sky charts for the different amounts of light pollution, so you can see which one matches your sky the best. In terms of sunrises and sunsets, as I alluded to, right now we've got the sun rising at 5:38 in the morning and setting about 9 p.m., which gives us 15¼ hours of daylight. 5 weeks from now, in our early July meeting, that'll be increased a little bit by 2 minutes to 15 hours and 17 minutes, because we've gone past the peak longest day, and we'll be heading down into the day shortening again after the third week of June. So here we are, speaking of that, on the 20th of June at 11:30 in the morning, summer officially begins at the June solstice. That's the point in the year when the sun is its farthest distance north of the celestial equator. And then just for fun, we've got Earth's orbit is elliptical, of course. So on July 5th at 6 p.m., Earth will officially be at its farthest point from the sun in our orbit, or about 1.5 million kilometers. Now, in terms of seeing objects at night when it's dark, you want the sky to be as dark as you can get it. And what we need to do there is to wait for the sun to drop below the horizon sufficiently so that the sky gets darker, as dark as it can be. So this graphic just shows you examples of how low the sun needs to be below the horizon for different classes of twilight. And astronomical twilight is the one we want to be finished with in order to get our full night of darkness. And astronomical twilight ends when the sun is dropped lower than 18 degrees below the horizon. And then astronomical twilight will resume in the morning when the sun climbs to within 18 degrees from the eastern pre-dawn sky, eastern pre-dawn horizon. And for the period that I'm covering tonight, the astronomical twilight tonight will end at 11:10 p.m. and resume at 3:21 a.m., giving imagers who want that dark, dark sky about 4 hours and 11 minutes of imaging. And that drops by about 2 minutes at the next RAN meeting on July 7th. In terms of observing the moon, we've got apogees and perigees, of course, as the moon gets closer and farther. This is significant because the full moon that we had last week was a so-called supermoon, which is what we call a moon, not astronomers, but the media and so on, refer to when the moon is within 90% of its closest approach to the Earth in its elliptical orbit. And that would have been the largest full moon of 2021. 2 weeks after that, we get the apogee moon, around the 7th of June or so. And that apogee will be when the moon is smallest, basically farthest from the Earth and a little smaller in the sky. That's going to be followed a few days later by a solar eclipse. And because the moon is just past apogee during that solar eclipse, it'll produce an annular eclipse where the moon isn't sufficiently large to cover the whole disk of the sun. And I'll show you the circumstances of the eclipse here in a couple of minutes. In terms of the moon phases, we have third quarter moon was this morning at 3:24 a.m. Third quarter moons rise around midnight and set during the middle of the day. Then we have our new moon on Thursday the 10th in the morning. That will bring that solar eclipse I just mentioned. The week after that, we get our first quarter moon. So the best time to view the moon in the sky, conveniently after dinner or after it's dark, is that first quarter through full period on June 17th to the 24th. That 24th will bring us the full strawberry moon. For obvious reasons, it's the time of year when the strawberries are ready to harvest. And then on July 1st, we have, since we're doing 5 weeks of sky this month, we have time to fit another phase of the moon in, and we get another third quarter repeating on the 1st of July at the end of the. And in terms of when you want to be looking at the dark sky, the deep sky objects, the dim objects, the best period to do that is the period between third quarter and new. So that's basically from right now, tonight, around past the 10th. So you could squeak another few nights after the 10th as the full young crescent moon sets early, soon after sunset. So leaving the sky nice and dark for a couple of nights after the new moon. And then that dark moonless period will resume again as we get past the 1st and beyond July. If you're interested in observing the moon in your telescope and wanting a good resource to do that, I highly recommend this NASA's Dial a Moon page. And you can actually navigate to this website and dial in your date and time in universal time. So you need to adjust the 4 hours back to Eastern time if you're using it. And it'll produce for you a current view of the moon at that hour. And that's a great tool for seeing what the phase of the moon is at the moment. It'll give you an annotated version of it. It'll even give you a version that's flipped upside down for your, if you're using a Newtonian reflector where the moon is inverted in your eyepiece. And I like using this tool also for confirming lunar X predictions. So if you hear that there's a lunar X going to appear on the moon near first quarter, then you can tinker with the hours on this dial and see just exactly which hour it'll be at its maximum. So let's switch over and do a little looking at stellarium. Here's the sky tonight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up some stellarium bookmarks to highlight some of the things that I've got coming on. So while we've been stuck at home, I've been encouraging people to enjoy the moon as a target. One of the things that you're going to see first is, oops, get this on here. There we go. On around the 12th of June, you can keep an eye out for the young crescent moon between Venus and Mars, and keep an eye out for Earth shine. That's that reflected sunlight bouncing off the Earth and illuminating the majority of the moon's dark disk. And you can get this, doesn't have to be just the 12th, you might be able to get it the evening before or an evening or two after that as well. So that's Earth shine. And then things to look out for in the moon, some of the major features to watch for on the next few nights. By the time we get to around past first quarter, say until around the 18th, let's go back a day to the 18th, you can then look for the lunar straight wall, Rupus recta, or the straight wall on the moon. That's located below the moon's equator near Marinubium here. That's a nice little vertical cliff that is very highly enhanced just after first quarter, a night or two after first quarter. And then if you head on up to the top, and these are probably visible on binoculars if you've got good binoculars, maybe on a tripod. You can look for these cool dramatic mountain ranges. So we've got the Apennine Mountains and the Lunar Alps that are actually the former sort of rim of the big Marinubium, Mariimbrium impact basin crater as well. Let me just bring this to center again, advance a couple more nights. A couple of nights later, you can look for the so-called golden handle effect. It's the rim of a partially submerged crater, now known as the Sinus Iridum or the Bay of Rainbows. And the former rim of the crater, it gets illuminated by the sun from the east and produces a nice sort of bright curve feature on the lunar surface. And it's got a couple of lunar promontories. Sinus Iridium is very, very flat, but if you grab your telescope and zoom in, you might be able to see some wrinkle ridges at this particular phase of the moon's cycle. A couple of nights after that, you can start focusing in on some of the neat western features on the moon. So for example, the crater Copernicus. Copernicus is really good both when it's partially in shadow, but also when the moon is getting full, because you can see the terraced edges that are inside the rim, the collapsed features on the inside of the rim. And you can look for these little dark halos. So some of the small craters around Copernicus have white centers and dark little rings around them because of the way the impact has come in and punched through the ejecta from Copernicus and punched down into the darker Mare basalt underneath and spread that out in a little ring around the crater. So you get these dark haloed craters around Copernicus. And one of the neat things that I like looking at is the Rider Gamma swirl. So that's down here. This is Aristarchus and Kepler. And if you make a little triangle and down to their sort of lower left onto the west, you can see this weird patch, sort of a stain, like a bright stain on the moon. And scientists think that's maybe as a result of a strong localized magnetic field that's prevented the rest of the lunar mare from darkening, so protecting it from cosmic rays. So you can see this cool sort of a tadpole shape on the moon. So those are a few things that you can look at during that moon observing period that I talked about a little while ago. All right, so let's jump up and talk a little bit about planets. So I'm going to go back to now, and I'm just going to bring up the western sky. So the planets that we have in the evening right now have mainly been Mars for quite some time. Mars has been sort of parked halfway up the western sky for a number of months, actually. But in fact, the Earth and Mars are actually increasing their distance from each other. So Mars has actually been getting smaller and dimmer week after week after week. But it's been parked there because as the sky gets carried west by the motion of the Earth around the sun, Mars's orbital motion eastward is counteracting some of that. And so it's sort of been holding its own as it swims kind of upstream. But that's coming to an end. So during the next few weeks, you're gonna see Mars losing its grip and starting to sink into the setting sun. And as it does that, we've got bright Venus that's starting a long, quite a lengthy apparition in the western post-sunset sky for us for I think most of this year, coming up to join it. They'll actually have a really close meeting in about the middle of July. What I'm going to do now is, before we get there though, I'm just going to bring the time a little bit later and show you a cool event that's going to happen with Mars right around the 23rd of June. Mars is going to actually cross right through the Beehive cluster, Messier 44. So if you want to make a note of that, that they'll be telescope close for about 3 nights, with the 23rd being the sort of the one where it goes right through. If I continue to advance the time, you see that actually Venus is going to do the same thing. It's going to pass through the Beehive as well, but by then Cancer will be so low in the west that it'll be virtually impossible to see those stars from our latitude. And then, as I said, if we advance another couple of weeks, and I'm sure the next person to do the sky this month will talk about this close Venus and Mars conjunction on the 12th of July. All right, let's wind back. Talk about a couple of other things. So the other thing we've got going on is that the big gas giant planets Jupiter and Saturn are now on the verge of starting to join the evening sky. So they're going to be starting to rise around midnight within the next couple of weeks, and you'll be able to catch them sitting in the southeastern sky between, basically between about 1 a.m. and almost sunrise, because they're bright enough to last into view as the sky is brightening in the morning. One of the cool things that you can look for is on the 26th of June, we're going to get a cool double shadow transit on Jupiter, where 2 of Jupiter's 4 Galilean moons will be aligned in such a way that their shadows will land on the planet as they orbit Jupiter. And what I think is really interesting about this event is that because Io has a smaller shadow because it's a smaller moon and it's closer to the planet. And then we have Callisto, which is farther from Jupiter, has a bit of a larger shadow. But Io, being closer to Jupiter, actually orbits around the planet faster. And so if you get up and look at this event, it starts about a little bit after 1 a.m. on the 26th. But if I advance the time, you can see that because Io orbits Jupiter faster, its shadow will overtake Callisto's shadow. And right around say 2:20, 2:25 a.m., they'll sort of pass each other, and then Io will lead the way across the planet for the rest of the time. So that's going to happen for us in the Greater Toronto area. That event will happen in a dark sky. It's in the wee hours if you're interested in getting up at that time of the day. Another neat thing with Mars, with the Jupiter and Saturn, is that on the, if I get this to come up, is that on the 28th of June, we've got a nice photo opportunity of the moon sitting between Jupiter and Saturn in the morning sky. They'll stay in view by the time it starts to get light in the morning, around 5 a.m., let's say. They'll be shining over the southern horizon. That may be something you want to get up and take a look at. Now, talking about that apogee moon, that brings us to the solar eclipse. Let me just bring the solar eclipse into view here. So that's an annual solar eclipse. For the Toronto area, the eclipse will be underway when the sun rises at about, let's see, around 5:40 in the morning. And so you can see that the moon will be covering about 80% of the sun. Worth getting up. I mean, if you've got if it's a clear morning, you check the forecast before setting your alarm, of course. Head up, you need to find a location that's got a nice, wide open, east-northeastern horizon. And it's not going to be one that's, going to be as easy to photograph because it's so low and so on, but definitely you can get up and take a look. This eclipse will be visible in the partial phase across large areas of eastern Canada. So if you live even further east of Toronto, sort of in the, Quebec, Montreal, Maritimes area, you'll get perhaps a little better view of it. And it's over for us in the Toronto area by about 6:40 in the morning. That's when the fourth contact will happen. The moon will finally move off the sun altogether. Obviously, this eclipse, no part of this eclipse will be safe to view without proper solar filters. There have been solar filters available from U of T has been providing them. The Sky News has skynews.ca, Canada's astronomy magazine, had them for order on their store. You may be able to go to Mastermind or something like that in order to get a pair by the 10th of June. Obviously, you want to keep those eclipse viewers once you've got them for the big show on April 8th of 2024, when we get a nice, almost full solar eclipse from Toronto and complete totality from in parts of Buffalo and Trenton, places like that. And that at that time, the sun will be nice and high in the sky at the peak of that eclipse. So mark your calendars. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that. A couple of other cool things to look out for this month. Minor planets. So the main belt asteroid Vesta has been hanging around in Leo for a little while now. And what's going to happen is around the 9th to the 12th of June, it's going to cross past the Leo triplet of galaxies. You can see them here in this view. So that's about 20 arc seconds between the pair M, just get the labels on here, M66 and M65 and the asteroid. Vesta's magnitude 7.35, so if it's a dark night, you can certainly see it in binoculars. But if you've got your telescope out and you want to catch a view of the asteroid passing them, that would be great. Or even a composite photo of a Vesta over a few nights would be a cool thing to see. I'm sure some rascal somewhere will get some pictures like that. Another one a bit similar to that is Juno. So Juno is going to reach opposition. Let me just get my note here and let you know when. So on the 6th of June, Juno will be at opposition, and it's sitting inside the box of Ophiuchus. That's in the southern sky, southeastern sky. But this is the sky at about 10 p.m. once it gets fully dark here. And then over the next few nights, it's eventually, and this is a little dimmer, so it's magnitude 10.1, so it's not as bright. But on the 13th, you can catch this naked eye star 30 Ophiuchi. But the real fun happens around the 18th, 17th, 18th, when Juno is going to have a close encounter with Messier 10, the globular cluster Messier 10. So that'll be another example of that mix of solar system object and deep sky object meeting up. So that's a neat effect. Now, comets. So we've got one comet that I noted worth looking at, and that's comet C2020 T2 Palomar. And as of tonight, it's sitting in western Botes, but roughly midway between Arcturus and Beta Comae Berenices. And over the next 5 weeks, this is the track from tonight down to July 7th. So it's going to be dropping southward between those two constellations. Note that Stellarium reports a much fainter magnitude than observers have been reporting. So most observers have been reporting this comet at about magnitude 10.5, which is certainly within the range of telescopes that most of us have. And so it'd be worth checking that out. It's about peaking in brightness now, so it'll gradually fade in brightness over the next few weeks. But certainly during this nice moonless period we're in right now, would be a great opportunity to go and check out that comet. Let's switch over and talk a little bit about viewing satellites. Just bring up this. So right now, the International Space Station is flying over Toronto. It's until tomorrow night. So the past that's been happening in evening will come to an end tomorrow night. And then it'll start appearing in the pre-dawn on the 27th and beyond. And I've noted here a few of the bright ones that are in the wee hours that I won't be getting up for, but maybe you want to get up. There's some of them are quite bright. And if you're interested in seeing that Chinese space station, I noted that you can find it using the heavensabove.com website. So that's heavens-above.com. Once you're there, you need to use the box in the upper right corner to install or insert or find your location, your geographic location. And then it'll report to you the sightings of these various bright satellites. So the Chinese space station has its own entry in heavensabove.com now. And I noted that it'll resume some pre-dawn passes on the 18th of June. And some of these passes are as bright as magnitude 1.1. So it's not as bright as the space station, but it certainly would be very noticeable as across the sky. And in terms of asteroidal occultations, I noted that we've got one occurring on the 18th of June at 1 minute to midnight. And it's asteroid Mentor, which is a really dim asteroid, occulting this star with a dip of 1.79 magnitudes for 9 seconds. And where that's located is it's in Aquila. I'll just bring up the view here and show you the occulted star. So it sits here in the upper wing of Aquila in the southeastern sky around midnight on the 18th, 19th. So that's an asteroidal occultation you can keep an eye out for. Now, in terms of what to look at in terms of the deep sky, first of all, variable stars. If you're interested in variable stars, there's a couple of them that are quite accessible to beginners. Let me just bring up this one here. I'll just bring my notes back up. Bear with me a second. Here we go. So Almazan, this is Aquila again. We're still in Aquila. This star Almazan 2, or Eta Aquilae, is a variable star. It's a Cepheid variable star that varies in brightness from magnitude 3.5 to almost 4.5 over 7.18 days. And at maximum, it shines almost as bright as the tail Lambda. So when you're out looking at Aquila, see if you can see if the star is similar to Lambda, or maybe it's more like one of these stars in between. This is a magnitude 4.4 star. This is a magnitude 3.4 star. So that's Eta Aquilae. Another one that you can check out is Sheliak, which is one of the corners of the parallelogram of Lyra. Sheliak is actually an eclipsing binary system. So it varies again between about magnitude 3.3 and 4.4 over about 13 days. And at its peak, it shines as bright as the star Sulfat. So you can see instantly how it is compared to Sulfat. And at its dimmest, it's as bright as Delta. So you can use these 3 of the 4 corners of Lyra to judge or gauge what part of the cycle Sheliak is in. Now, in terms of deep sky, what I recommend that people focus on this month is take a look and give some love to the constellation of Canis Venatici. It's not a very glamorous constellation. It's really only got these 2 main stars. It's actually meant to be the hunting dogs. So Canis Venatici are the hunting dogs. The bright star Coriolis is actually a wonderful double star. You don't need much skill to pick this one up or split it in your telescope. And it's part of the RASC double star observing program. So that's an easy one to mark off your list. Another one of the stars in Canis Venatici that's part of the double star program is a more challenging one, and that's 2CVN. And that's this one down here. And you can see you need a little more power to split this one, to magnify enough to split it. I'm just going to add a telescope view here, just to get there's about a 1.5 degree eyepiece field of view circle. And let's look at some of the other neat things that are available in this constellation. So first of all, we've got Messier 3, which is a bright globular cluster. So that's a great one to check out. And we've got other Messier objects. We've got M106, Spiral Galaxy. Whoops, pulled it out of the view here. There's M106. We've got M94. more of a face-on spiral, smaller, but a bright core to it. And then we've got Messier 63 up here. Not as quite as bright, but that's the Sunflower Galaxy. And then don't neglect the other corner, because that's where we've got our friend Messier 51, the Whirlpool Galaxy. So a lot of people think of that as, or associate this galaxy with the Big Dipper, with the tip of the handle of the Big Dipper, the star Alkaid, but actually it's inside the border of Canis Venatici. So those are the sort of Messier targets, but there's all kinds of other great targets. So the RASC has a program or an alternate list to the Messiers called the Finest NGC program. And there are a number of Finest NGC galaxies in this constellation from that list. One of which is a famous one. Let's see if we can grab here. There's our whale. Here we go. So the whale and the hockey stick share the eyepiece of a low power telescope. These are quite bright galaxies. They're not large, but they're quite bright surface brightness because they're edge on to us. The whale is so called because there's a small NGC tucked in beside it that sort of looks like the breath coming out of the whale. It's got a bit of a whale shape as well. It's not a very symmetrical shaped disk to that galaxy. And then the crowbar or hockey stick galaxy sit nearby. We've got some gravitational tugging going on that has distorted the shape of this galaxy. So check those out. We've also got, let's see, the Waterbug galaxy here. There's my Waterbug. This is the Finest NGC galaxy. The Finest NGCs don't tend to be quite as big and bright as the Messiers, but they're definitely worth a look. Silver Needle, where's our Silver Needle? Just to give you another example of one here. This is another quite large in the eyepiece, but very narrow slash, and it's bright as a result of its edge-on appearance. And hunt around. There are lots of other really cool objects in this constellation. We've got a really lovely open spiral here, NGC 4395. And if you just grab your stellarium and look around, you can pick up a number of these that are bright enough to see. One tip that you can use in stellarium actually is to go into the sky viewing options, head over to your Deep Sky Objects tab, and switch on your Use Proportional Hints. And that'll actually make the symbol a little bit bigger if the object is a little bit brighter and easier to see. So you can sort of rank the deep sky objects that way. One of the things I want to also mention when you're using stellarium for sort of planning your observing is to, not all objects have a picture associated with them. So here's an example of a galaxy that I wrote about in Sky News, the current Sky News issue of the Hiding in Plain Sight, where this is the star, here's the Big Dipper, and this is the rear leg of Ursa Major. And around the sort of knee or elbow of the rear leg of the bear is the star Chi, Ursa Majori. And there's an NGC sitting here, but there doesn't look like much going on. But if you go down to your stellarium and you enable your Deep Sky Survey tab, it'll reveal that there's actually quite a bright little edge-on galaxy sitting there right beside the star. So you can use your telescope without a go-to, just aim it at the star. Bear in mind the field of view is 1.5 degrees, depending on the size of field of view of your telescope, maybe more, maybe less. And you can pick up some of these objects that are just tucked in close to brighter objects. And just to finish off, I just thought I'd mention La Superba. So La Superba is a cool carbon star in Canis Venatici. It's also known as YCVN. And it pulsates and changes its magnitude between about 4.8 and 7.3 over half a year, 157 days. It's located, so here's the Big Dipper, and here's the stick of the hunting dogs, and La Superba is this nice reddish star tucked in there. And so I think with that, I'll stop and see if anyone has any questions.
Chris, thank you so much for a very thorough discussion this month, as always. Great job, well done. Let's go to Emma and find out if we have any questions online.
We do. First question comes in from Leo. Are there any good sites in the GTA to see the eclipse?
So obviously for the eclipse, you don't need, what you need is a sight line. You don't need to be sort of escaping the city lights or anything like that. Anything that you can see, let me just grab the eclipse. Bring that back up again here. So the key here is if you can get to high ground, you want to be able to be as high as you can, high in elevation, and have a view towards the dawn, right? It's the dawn sky, the northeastern sky. So maybe the lakeside might help you in some cases, although it's sort of in the wrong quadrant for Lake Ontario's shoreline. But if you keep an eye on the Rascals forum and messages like that, we'll be reporting various places to go. Assuming that, it's safe to travel, you want to maintain your social distancing and follow your local medical advice about, gathering for eclipse watching. And you can watch it online. They'll be streaming it online as well.
Thank you. Ennio wants to know, is there a minimum aperture size to see the galaxies as well as Vesta?
It really comes down to how dark your sky is. So if it's already moonless, so if you can get yourself a dark sky location away from light pollution, you can get down to a 4-inch telescope. 4-inch, 6-inch telescope would be more than enough to see the Leo triplet. They're fairly bright galaxies, and Vesta itself would be no problem at all.
Second question from Ennio: are there any pictures shot by amateurs of the Chinese station?
I haven't seen any, but I'm sure we'll be getting some. There'll be more attention, of course, once the astronauts head up. So stay tuned to the media for that.
Do you know how the Chinese space station compares to the ISS in number of astronauts, size, and distance from Earth?
I don't have all the details, but it's one of these processes where the station is planned to be grown in size by adding modules over time. If you Googled images of the station, you can see kind of the base module now, but you can see mock-ups, artist renditions, where it's got lots of modules strapped onto it and a bigger network created. So I don't know what the time frame is for that, but I'm imagining that they're planned to grow it bigger if they can.
Last question comes in from Blake. What is the compass bearing of the sunrise for the GTA?
It's right here on the screen right now. So this will be 57 degrees, almost 58 degrees east of true north.
That's all the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, thanks, Chris. I know it takes a long time to prepare such a presentation, so we really appreciate the time you put into it. Let's move on to our next speaker. Stuart Heggie will talk to us about astrophotography. Go ahead, Stuart.
All right, thanks, Paul. I hope everyone can hear me. My name's Stuart Heggie. I've probably met many people in the Toronto Centre over the years, but we've moved out to a farm outside the small town of Lucknow near Kincardine and Goderich. 100 acres, very dark skies, and makes possible lots of astroimaging from here. Pretty well every clear night. So today I'm going to talk about two aspects of astrophotography, deep sky and skyscapes. I'm not an expert on planetary or solar system photography, but I'll do my best to talk a bit about deep sky and skyscapes. I'd also like to just give a shout out to the RASC's astroimaging certificates, where I am currently the committee chair. We've gotten lots of submissions, super high quality, and like to see more. So hopefully this presentation will stimulate some people to pull a portfolio together and make an application. And I'd also like to give a shout out to the RASC's remote telescope in California, and I'm helping in that regard with the ops team. All right, so I'll just plow right in, and people yell if interrupt or whatever is appropriate if I stray. I'm going to try and cover how I got into the hobby, what kinds of astrophotography I do, the gear I use now, the software I use now. I'll talk a little bit about things I've used in the past to help people see a pathway to more fancy gear. I'll review a handful of recent images and talk a little bit about the challenges that I encountered doing each one. Maybe some more. I'll give some shout outs to resources on the internet that I relied on to learn the things I use, and another plug for the RASC programs I'm associated with. All right, so who am I and how did I fall into this trap? I got my undergrad in astrophysics at U of T. I won't tell you how long ago it was because I just feel old. I was an avid photographer since childhood, and so once I was in the workforce and had a bit of money, I was able to buy a telescope and merge the two passions. The first telescope I got was a Meade 2120 SCT. It's a 10-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain. It got replaced by the LX50, which was replaced by another one and another one and another one. And the other thing was an SPC 102, which is a Celestron 4-inch f9.8 on a Vixen Super Polaris mount. And that was actually the better rig of the two for my budding astrophotography career. I built my first observatory where I used to live in Flesherton in 2002. I built my second observatory here at the farm when we moved here in 2013. I built my third observatory next to the second observatory in 2015. I then went for counseling. I'm currently the chair of the RASC Astro Imaging Committee, as I said, and on the ops and photography teams for the remote telescope in California. The picture on the left, a recent skyscape with Comet Neowise in the upper left. You can see my two observatories. The roll-off shed has my two imaging rigs. The 12-foot clamshell dome is for clients, and I host other imagers here off and on. And on the right is an actual, I think, film image from way back of the lagoon. So the gear I have right now is I have two rigs running, Planewave 12.5-inch CDK, corrected Dal Kirkham, with an Apogee U16M camera on the back, and that pair is on top of a Paramount ME, and I use an Astrodome Mega Monster off-axis guider with an ST402 guider camera for guiding those photos. The Apogee camera is currently en route to Ireland for repair. The other rig, which I've been using extensively lately, is an Astrophysics AP155 EDF, so 6-inch refractor, a Moravian G4 camera, same chip as the U16M. They're on a Paramount MX, same guider camera, but on a piggyback achromat. And sometimes I will put a field flattener on the back of the AP155 and swap my Nikon D810A in place of the Moravian G4, but I don't do it too often. But it is fun because in a couple of minutes you get pictures that take hours to get the hard way. I also have an Ioptron Sky Guider Pro for wide field and skyscape photography, where I use my Nikon D810A and a variety of wide field lenses from 8mm fisheye to 85mm f1.4. In the past, I'm going to share this just so people realize that you can use pretty clunky gear and still do really good astrophotography. So you don't have to have, a mortgage to get into astrophotography. I had an Orion ED80 f7.5, a cute little scope. If you pick it up by the focuser, the telescope will fall off, so you have to be careful with that. I had a Vixen R200 SS, which is an f4 8-inch Newtonian, a Vixen VC200L, an 8-inch classical Cassegrain, a Takahashi FS102, f8 refractor, a GSO 8-inch Ritchie Chrétien, a TAC FSQ f5, and an Astrophysics 130 EDT. I've had all of those, they're all gone, but they all took photos for me and they did a great job. I've had two Vixen Super Polaris mounts, love them. I've had 3 G11s. I had a Vixen Super Polaris DX, which is kind of a collector's item. I've had an AP900 QMD mount, sold that, replaced it with an AP900 GTO, I've sold that. And cameras, I've used Nikon F2 film cameras. I started imaging CCD with an ST7E, then an ST10XME, then 2 STL11000s, and now I have the 2 big cameras from Moravian and Apogee. Software I use for deep sky images, the SkyX for camera and mount control, and for image capture, I use CCD Commander for automated imaging so I can sleep. I use TeamViewer to communicate with the observatories from the house so I don't get insect bites. And I use PixInsight for image calibration, cleanup, and alignment, stacking, and assembling RGB, but I use Photoshop for blending H-alpha with RGB or luminance with RGB. And I use Photoshop for cleanup and preparing for web upload. And for the DSLR, I pretty much use Lightroom, but my camera does in-camera stacking. You can do up to 10 photos stacked, up to 15 minutes each. So it's pretty handy, and I don't have to do a lot of fooling around to get the photo ready for Lightroom. So I'm going to just show 7 photos, and I'm going to talk a little bit about each one and the challenges I faced. The first one, they'll all be pretty much recognizable. So the first one is M31. This is an LRGB. I was pretty happy with this one. The things that are challenging about mosaics, PixInsight makes mosaics way easier, but learning how to do them in PixInsight, not easy. Once you have the knack, it does a superb job, but it definitely, you have to do some homework. So getting this stitched together with no seams and no obvious transition was tricky. The thing I like most about this image is it's pretty deep. You can see a strong bridge between M110 and the main body of M31, which is, I think, a sign of a deep image. If you see black between those two galaxies, not so deep. Now this is a 2-frame mosaic of the Veil, parts of the Veil Nebula. It's a narrowband image. This was a brutal mosaic to try and assemble, and as all photographers know, I can see all the warts. I can tell you where the seams are. Hopefully you can't see them. But anyway, this one I was pleased with when it was done, but the goal was to get a 4-frame mosaic with the entire veil, which I managed to do eventually. This is a different processing approach, so the colors are different. Again, you know, I can see where the seams are, but I was pleased in the end with how this turned out. But it was worth the effort, but it was a lot of work. Now I'm going to show you the Swan Nebula, M17. This is an unusual framing because I have a large field of view with the refractor and the big chip Moravian camera. So I decided to put the M17 in the bottom corner so that I could get this much fainter nebula in the upper right. This is the H-alpha channel. This is the RGB channel. And now I'll show you what it looks like when you blend the H-alpha and RGB. So hopefully you can see a difference. There's the H-alpha now blended in. That's done in Photoshop using a blending mode called Lighten, which only adds the H-alpha where it's brighter than the RGB signal. Depending on my MacBook Pro, I can't see the difference between the two, but on this monitor I see a strong difference. So hopefully you all saw that. This picture is an unusual nebula, NGC 1333. This is an LRGB image, very deep. I went, as you can see on the left panel, hopefully 2 hours in red, 3 hours in green, 2 hours in blue, and 510 minutes in luminance. Put all that together, and this is what popped out. But I would also say that this same data set I shared with my friend Carrie-Ann Lucky Hepburn, and she processed it. Hers looks, of course, she's a better processor than I am, so she did a nicer version, but it's similar looking to this, and she submitted it to APOD, and we won an APOD, one of many for her, my very first, so I was very excited by that. This one I just completed. This is called the Flying Bat, or the Bat, and this green thing in the middle is called the Squid. The Flying Bat is a classic H-alpha RGB kind of object. I think this is an LRGB image with H-alpha enhancement. I've got a typo there. But to get the Squid, you have to image in through an 03 filter. And it was unbelievably faint. It was only discovered something like 10 years ago. So here I have 24 times 10 minutes of red, and well, you can see on the left side. So 4 hours of red data and 2.5 hours of green, almost 4 hours of blue, 5 hours of luminance, and 11 hours of H alpha. So that got the red and the stars and all that, and then 15 hours of O3 to get the squid in the center to come out. And even at 15 hours stat, it was barely perceptible. It had to be stretched really hard, and at the end, it was pretty noisy, but you know, it goes in and the warts are somewhat hidden. But I would say this is one of the hardest images I've ever had to put together. It was very difficult to process, but I'm pleased with the result. Hopefully, hopefully people like it. This is also a classic. This is the Orion Nebula, of course. The challenge with these is, as people who've tried it know, the trapezium area of M42 is super bright. And in order to get all the faint wispy details in the outer extremities and not blow out the core, you have to image very short exposures for the core and build an image that really only does justice to the very brightest parts of the nebula, then do another very deep image where you know the core is going to get blown out, but you don't worry about that, and then you combine them in such a way in Photoshop that you can mask the core in one image so that the fainter one appears in place of the burnt out part. But I was pleased with how this turned out. I think it's pretty smooth. Not a ton of H alpha data because it is really bright in H alpha, but the trick is, you know, finding an artful blending combination that retains color in the core, detail down to the trapezium, and a transition from the brightest areas to the dimmest areas that doesn't look, you know, overly artificial. And now on to skyscapes. This is obviously Comet Neowise. This past year, we took our Ioptron Sky Guider out to Lake Huron at Point Clark, set up in a parking lot that was illuminated for apparently a Major League Sports event. It was impossible to see anything, but closed the eyepiece on the camera so the lights weren't shining into the back of the camera, set it up and set it for, I think, 10 by 2 minutes stacked in the camera, and I was lucky enough to get a bright meteor streak through one of the frames, and this was the result. So those Ioptron Sky Guider Pros, I think, are super investment if you're interested in a tracker and you don't have one yet. I get paid nothing for saying that, so I'm sure there are other really good ones, but that's the one I have. These are pictures from our yard. So if you're curious about, is it dark really where I live? Yes, it's pretty dark here. This is on the front lawn looking at the road, and this is what I see normally. This is, again, taken with the Sky Guider Pro and a much wider, this is probably the 14 to 24 millimeter lens. And that's Jupiter and Saturn, I think, on the left. Another shot from the yard, taken at another time. Jupiter has now moved to the right in the Milky Way. I think Saturn's out of the picture, trying to get Antares and the nebulosity around it to show. But I have to admit, from this latitude, that's you're really pushing the data pretty hard to get it to show up. But it's pretty rewarding, and you know, as compared to deep sky photography, this is a whole lot of fun and reward for relatively modest effort. So totally encourage people to get into this kind of shooting if they're interested in astrophotography. This is from the front yard again, looking straight up, 14 to 24 millimeter lens. The core, or the main part of the Milky Way going through Cygnus. Just a pretty picture again, but these are multiple images stacked at camera, so more than a snapshot, but not a whole lot more. Now I was trying to get arty, so I turned the lights on in our barn and set up so that I could see the barn in the shot and get the Milky Way above, and then I turned all the house lights on so that the foreground foliage would get illuminated. It looks very surreal in the photo. I guess the greenery is not quite that green, but that's how it came out in the photo. So I was pleased with this, but it was having some fun. And again, I would say, you know, for anyone who's interested in this kind of photography, this is a great way to start. Okay, so I promised I would get into resources. And I know there are many people who offer training in PixInsight, and I know some of them personally very, very well. And I definitely encourage you to explore those. But to be honest, when I first got introduced to PixInsight, there weren't a lot of resources available. And I found this website, Harry's Astro Shed, and he does amazing video tutorials. They're free. You just go to his website, download them. He has a 2-part tutorial on processing M106 as an RGB and then LRGB. And at the end of that tutorial, you know 90+% of everything you'll use in PixInsight. It's really good. Now, for those mosaics in PixInsight, this tutorial on YouTube by Steve Allen was a lifesaver. There are some very quirky qualities of PixInsight's mosaicing feature that if you know them, it does a superb job. If you don't know them, you will struggle and probably be unhappy. And then a friend online, Bob Franke, the person who wrote Excalibrator, which does G2V calibration for color correction. He does a number of video tutorials or PowerPoint tutorials for using Photoshop and narrowband imaging. His website is a superb resource. So definitely encourage people to go and visit that if you're looking for help with, especially with narrowband imaging. Okay, and I promised, I gave a shameless promotion, I'll do it again. The astro imaging certificates come in 3 flavors: wide field, solar system, and deep sky. The web address is there. It's also readily visible on the RAC website. Totally encourage everyone to sign up for those. It's a good stimulation to get out and complete a portfolio for any one of the categories. A lot of fun, and the judges are very nice. I can attest to that. So if you need some help getting your pictures up to the standard that the certificate awardees get, we'll help you. And also, on behalf of Jenna, who I think spoke last meeting, consider the subscription service for the data stream from the 16-inch Arcos in California. I help with the ops side of it. The data coming out of SRO, where the scope is top quality. Very nice. All right, and I don't know where we are in time. I have a feeling I got a little bit of time. I can show 3 more if you want to see them. The Wizard Nebula, the Pac-Man, and the Bubble, and this will go a little deeper into blending a narrowband with RGB or LRGB. So I'll just go quick. This is the Wizard Nebula in LRGB, and it's I think I was plenty happy with this, but at the same time, it's a very strong H-alpha source, so I added this H-alpha data to it and then put them together, and you can see a lot more of the reds come out. The nuances and the distinctions between deep red and pinks become more apparent. So I think, you know, if you have a monochrome camera and an H-alpha filter, don't be afraid to use it, and, you know, ask for help from various sources to learn how to blend them. This is the Pac-Man. This is straight RGB of the Pac-Man. This is just before my camera failed, so you can see some streaks off of all the stars, like they're crying. That's my shutter malfunctioning. Here's the H-alpha data, and here it is blended together. Now this is a little more subtle, but the idea here is there is more red in the region around the Pac-Man. The lines between where the Pac-Man is and isn't become blurred a bit because the H-alpha extends farther from the main part of the nebula than just the RGB reveals. But again, you know, the star colors survive the blending if you do it in Photoshop or carefully in PixInsight. And then lastly, this is an interesting project, also very hard. This is an RGB image of the Bubble Nebula and M52 and a host of other deep sky objects. I was plenty happy with this, but then I thought, well, you know, there's a lot of narrowband signal here, so I added H-alpha to it, and the reds start to pop. It gets a little more busy, harder to see some things, easier to see other things. But I also have a sulfur filter and an oxygen filter, so this is what it looks like in pure narrowband. And now it's even harder to find some of the familiar objects, and all kinds of things you didn't notice before are taking center stage. And of course, with all that data, why not put it all together? So here is the narrowband image with an overlay of the RGB data. And now the star colors are back to being natural, and the narrowband features of the nebulae are more visible. So that's kind of what the progression from RGB to full-on narrowband to full-on narrowband plus RGB looks like. And I think that's it. All right. So back to questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Stuart, for a great presentation, especially for taking us through the progression of equipment, what you went through, and then what you settled on, and also the software that you use. Very interesting. And of course, fabulous images, completely outstanding. Very well done.
Thank you.
Let's go to Emma with some questions.
We've got a few questions for you here. First question comes in from Ennio. Any thoughts on Nikon versus Canon?
Yes, I have strong thoughts on that question. That question drives me crazy. I will say both cameras are smarter than I am, and I think you should pick the one that is more intuitive for you. When I picked up a Nikon, I instantly felt, wow, I totally get this. When my wife was shopping for her first DSLR, I said, get a Canon camera. I'm brand agnostic, but when I pick up a Canon, I have to struggle harder to remember where everything is and where all the buttons are. I can run my Nikons blindfolded in the dark and not think twice. So I'm used to them. I like them. The glass is excellent in both camps. I would say pick the one where you feel a bond with the camera and use that one. And of course, Canon has made many astro-friendly cameras, and their newest one is superb. The D810A is an excellent astro camera from Nikon, but I would say buy the one that you feel most comfortable with. Okay.
Thanks. Next question comes in from Blake. When you were a kid shooting photos, did you do your own film processing?
When I was doing my own film processing in university, not when I was a kid. So black and white mostly. I had an enlarger, all the kit, and had a lot of fun doing that kind of stuff. A lot of fun. I would, if I was to do it over again, I would definitely do that again. But I've gotten over it, so I don't do it anymore.
Reza wants to know, can you recommend locations for capturing the Milky Way and galactic core in southern Ontario?
Well, as I said earlier, being on the lakeshore is brilliant for southern targets, and you'll want a low southern horizon with no light in that direction. So I would say get down to Lake Ontario shorelines for Milky Way shots, especially of the center of the Milky Way, Sagittarius and Scorpius. Anywhere else in the Milky Way, overhead, Orion, things like that, just get somewhere dark. And Orion's plenty high enough. You don't have to worry about having a low horizon, but you definitely need to be somewhere dark.
Are CMOS cameras available for astroimaging, and do they offer any advantages over CCD cameras?
There are lots of CMOS cameras for astroimaging, and CCD cameras are on the way out anyway. So if you were to buy a new astro camera, you probably should be looking at CMOS cameras. These 1600 and 2600 cameras from who is it? QHY, ASI. I can never remember who it is, but they're much lower noise, and they have a huge advantage over CCD in that regard. Flat fielding of CMOS cameras, there's some controversy from super experts that it is harder to do. The chips don't behave quite as properly as the CCDs did, but the reality is I see all kinds of images from CMOS cameras that are superb, and I don't think you should worry about that. But if I were to buy a new camera today, I would probably be shopping for a CMOS camera because CCDs are on the way out.
Thank you. Steve wants to know if you have any comments on Dahl-Kirkham versus Schmidt-Cassegrain for astrophotography.
I'm gonna get in trouble. So I have like a serious, I don't want to say I have a hate on for Schmidt-Cassegrains, but I'm not really fussy on Schmidt-Cassegrains. The Dahl-Kirkham, I'll quote Peter Saravolo, who manufactured corrected Dahl-Kirkhams, and he's an optical design genius. He said in some interview that the corrected Dahl-Kirkham was the best astrograph design, period. So I'll bow to him. He knows his stuff. I'm a big fan of astrophysics gear. They make all kinds of crazy telescopes. I love refractors, but if I had to answer between Schmidt-Cassegrain and Dahl-Kirkham, I would say hands down Dahl-Kirkham. Now, if you're talking about the RASA, the Roe Ackerman version, those to me aren't really Schmidt-Cassegrains, but those produce superb images. But they're very expensive too, so there's no cheap way to get big glass or big mirrors into the astrophotography game. But yeah, Dahl-Kirkham over classical Schmidt-Cassegrains, and the Roe Ackerman version, very good as well.
Okay, this is our last question. What is your favorite picture or your favorite thing that you've photographed so far?
Ooh. Well, I'm a sucker for the really famous objects. I love photographing M42. I love photographing M31. I've had some crazy experiences where I take a picture that's like big shrug, and then I get contacted by a professional astronomer saying, oh, like one instance, the Beehive cluster. It was an okay photo. Then I get contacted, and this guy says, oh, I discovered 2 exoplanets in the Beehive cluster, and I need a photo for a local kid did good in my hometown paper. Can we use it? I was, yeah, sure. And then he calls back 2 weeks later and says, NASA wants to use your photo now. Is that okay? Of course it's okay. When I had a very nice film photo of Venus, Mars, and the crescent moon, and I got a call from the University of Nevada, and they were in charge of the public outreach for the one of the Mars orbiters, and they wanted to do public outreach, and they wanted to use my photo at the start for, since the dawn of time, people have looked up at the night sky and marveled at the movement of the planets. And so I was like, it's not an amazing photo, but I was thrilled that it got used that way. And then the last one was a third quarter crescent moon shot, and I got contacted by the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, and they wanted to use it for the Messenger spacecraft outreach, where they said, the third quarter moon looks just like Mercury. Most people can't tell the difference if we put them on at the same size. So they used my photo and a Messenger spacecraft photo for comparison, and then they had a little quiz where you had to guess which was which. So I printed that off and I put it on my wall in my office at work, and I said, look at that, look at the photo credits. Crescent Moon, Stuart Heggie, all other pictures by the Messenger spacecraft. I said, look at that, I got first billing over $1 billion spacecraft. So that one's near and dear for that reason.
Well, thank you. That's all the questions.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here.
Sure, just thought of a question myself. The Chinese made RC scopes like the GSO, are they any good for photography?
Well, I think so. When I was asked by KW Telescopes to use one of the first ones to take some pictures that they hung in their gallery to encourage people to use them. At the time, the focuser was messed up and it wouldn't square, and then they replaced it, and then it was fine. Then I said, well, it's a very slow, so can I get a field focal reducer? No, there isn't one. Well, now there's a focal reducer. So I think if you speed them up a bit with a focal reducer, I think they are really good. And I think Carrie Ann has one, and she does really good work with hers, of course. So I would say they're a great value. And the one I have on my website, a couple of pictures taken with one when they were just coming out, and I think they're great photos. But don't put a monster chip on the back of one and without a lot of tuning of the spacing, and you probably need a flattener. for that to work. But for most cameras, I think they would be great.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Stuart. Great presentation.
Thank you. Okay, I'm muting myself.
We'll move on to our next speakers, brother and sister team, Arushi and Artash Nath. Will talk to us about simulating hypothetical asteroid scenarios, learnings from the 2021 Planetary Defense Conference. Go ahead, guys.
Hey, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Artash. I'm in grade 9.
And hello, everyone. I'm Arushi, and I'm in grade 6. And we're both from Toronto. Today, we're going to be talking to you about some scenarios that the Planetary Defense Conference has.
So let's get right into it. First of all, what is the Planetary Defense Conference? Well, the PDC conference is a conference that happens every 2 years in places all around the world. And during this conference, people from all around the world come to discuss about asteroids and the potential threat they face to the Earth. There are several presentations from many people on varying topics, from mapping asteroids to characterizing their risks. The Planetary Defense Conference was in 2019 in Maryland. And in fact, in that conference, I was able to give a poster presentation about one of my projects, which was on using machine learning to predict the risk index of asteroid collisions with Earth. And that was an awesome experience, which, my project even won an honorable mention, which is why we were back for the 2021 Planetary Defense Conference, where we both gave an oral presentation on our journey imaging Apophis. And if you want to learn more about that, in fact, you can just check out our most recent RAS presentation.
Yeah, so now this Planetary Defense Conference, each time they host it, they have a simulation. And this simulation, they use an imaginary asteroid, and it's only colliding with the Earth. And each day, first of all, they give like baseline information. So at the beginning of the conference, they give information about this asteroid. And then each day, they give more and more information about the asteroid. Then, this scenario planning, where from that information that you get, you can find the impact probability, the location that the impact will happen, and so on. And at the end, there's even a cool simulation that you can use. So first, let's look at the baseline information. So this was taken right before the conference started. So this time, the asteroid was named the 2021 PDC asteroid. And this, as I said before, was an imaginary asteroid. It didn't really exist. Because as you guys can see, for a real asteroid in its name, the letters have to come before the numbers. And they took some observations of this asteroid, and it's actually a very faint asteroid, and it had a magnitude of 21.5. And based on that information, they found the impact probability. It was 1 in 2,500. And the JPL confirmed it, as well as the European Space Agency. And from this information, you cannot deduct much because it was only the first couple of days of observing, but based on the absolute magnitude and the assumed albedo for mature asteroids is normally in between 10 to 15%, they found that it could go from a range from as small as 35 meters to 700 meters as diameter for this asteroid. And now, where will this asteroid hit? So we didn't have much information about the asteroid, like we had only been observing it for a couple of days. So we did not know where the asteroid would hit. And actually what they did is they took 7,000 random samples of where it could hit based on previous observations. And they covered a lot of the Earth, like this whole hemisphere, as you can see in the figure, is covered. So, and on the first day of the conference, they gave the first inject of more information. So, after these observations, they hadn't been able to take some observations for a couple of days, as there was a full moon. But after this couple of days, they were able to get some good observations, and actually, the impact probability increased from 1 in 2,500 to 1 in 20. And the impact, as this was taken like a week or so after, the days of impact was only 180 days, which meant that we only had 6 months to prepare. And we can see in future days we can see how much we can deduct the probability of the asteroid impacting the Earth to increase based on our observations. And actually, the I1 has will be giving future every week. They'll be giving more information about this asteroid. So for the asteroid location, we still cannot deduct the asteroid location because the trajectory of the asteroid is still highly uncertain. So there's still 2/3 of the Earth that the asteroid could go. For example, it could go to eastern Canada, but on the other side, it cannot go to Australia. And to get a better understanding of this asteroid, it would be great if, because this asteroid didn't just start existing now, it would have been existing for a long time. So if you could look at the previous images that we've been taken in Sky Survey, we might be able to detect this asteroid in other images. And using that information, we will be able to change the impact probability because we would know a better orbit. And now, the damage of this asteroid. So it is still highly uncertain because the size of the asteroid is very uncertain, but there's still a very high chance, a 97% chance, that there'll be very little damage or zero because the asteroid may land in some lakes or oceans. But if it does happen, then there'll be a very high impact. Okay, so now let's look at the second impact. So actually here, it was great because they were able to find this object in previous Sky Survey images from the Pan-STARRS telescope. So this was about 7 years ago in 2014. So since then, we were able to track the asteroid. And after using this information, the impact probability rose to 100%, which means it's definitely impacting the Earth. And yeah, so let's look at the impact location. So now the impact location has actually shrunk a lot. So as you can see in the figure, it's now covering Europe and a part of North Africa. Africa. And yeah, so now we knew a better range of the location because of the Sky Survey. And as you can see, it's most likely to happen in around the middle, as you can see in the color coding. So this is the third impact. So here we looked at the infrared measurements, and this was taken from the Neowise satellite. And based on those, we found out the better size range. So we were able to find that from 35 meters to 700 meters, it became 35 to 500 meters. And the location has shrunk a lot to only happen in 5 countries now. So Germany, Czech Republic, Austria, Slovenia, and Croatia. So now that we have a better understanding of this asteroid, we can look properly at the damage. So now there's a very little chance that it will cause no damage because we know that there's no lakes or oceans in this area. So it will probably affect hugely, going all the way to millions of people getting damaged. So now this is the fourth and final impact. So now it's being tracked by the Goldstone radar, so we can get even better size estimates. So here we found that the size is ranging from now 94 meters to 116 meters. So this is a great, like we've reduced it so much, all the way going from 35 to 700 meters to now only 94 to 116 meters. And at this time, this is just a couple of weeks before the impact is going to happen. And this means that we will not be able to send a mission to impact this asteroid to change its orbit quickly enough because we don't have enough time. So in this scenario, that asteroid would definitely impact the Earth. So now for the impact location. So it was reduced because it's very close by, so you can see much more information about it. So it was reduced to the border in between Germany and Czech Republic. And you can also see the same damage rate, so most likely in the middle and so on.
All right, so as Arushi said, it's impossible for us to deflect the asteroid in space at this point in the simulation. But why is that? Well, usually, in this case, the amount of delta velocity that we need to impart to the asteroid to deflect it is way too much. Usually how an asteroid would be deflected is by slightly changing the orbit of the asteroid so that its orbit slowly starts moving away from the intersecting with Earth's orbit. And this process usually happens over the period of several orbits. And in each orbit, the asteroid is slowly moving away from the Earth's orbit. But in this case, we don't have the time to wait that many orbits. The asteroid is already very close by to the Earth. So we don't have strong enough rockets to be able to impact that amount of energy to the asteroid to deflect it in time. So in an in real life situation, this type of asteroid would not be able to be mitigated in space. It would be landing on Earth. So if we can't deflect an asteroid when it's so close to the Earth, then what can we do about it? Well, that's why early asteroid detection warning systems are necessary. If near-Earth observation survey missions like the NEO-SM or the Vera Rubin Observatory was already in place in 2014, we would be able to have detected this asteroid way long ago and track it and get more information about it. And we would have been warned that the asteroid is going to impact the Earth from way before. This would have given us the time required to set up a mission to mitigate the asteroid while in space.
Yes, so now that we have that, I'm going to talk to you about the simulation that was based on those 5 days of results. So this simulation was developed by Aerospace. So basically, I'm going to first walk you through what you can see on your screen right now. So this is just a print screen of the simulation. So look at section 1. This is the distance from the Earth until, so basically this is the distance from the Earth that the asteroid is before it's going to collide with the Earth. So the x-axis is the time before the impact, and the y-axis is the distance to the Earth in astronomical units. So as you can see, at the end, when it's going to impact, the distance is 0. Now, we can look at section 2. So section 2, so it shows the orbit of the Earth, and it shows the orbit of the asteroid. And this is useful for knowing like when they would go closer, when they would go farther, and so on. And in the third section, this is actually a very interesting part, because here you can see there's a blue shaded circle, and that blue circle represents the Earth. And the small green dot that you can see means that that is the asteroid. So right now you can see that the asteroid is on the blue circle, which means the asteroid is right now impacting the Earth. So during the simulation, we will try to remove this asteroid away from the blue circle, and actually even away from the dark red circle you can see here, because even if the asteroid is close to the Earth, it will still impact the Earth because of the Earth's gravitational force. So we have to move it away from the dark red circle. So to do this, we're using kinetic impactors in the simulation. So this is just an overview of a couple of the rockets that you'll be seeing. So the Atlas V, the Falcon Heavy, and the Delta Heavy. So here you can see two things. First is the launch cost, and this signals how much these rockets would cost to go and impact the asteroid, because there would be a budget limit eventually. And the second one is how much damage it will give to the asteroid when it impacts it. So now let's look at the simulation. So I'm just going to share my screen to the simulation right here. So you should see my simulation screen right here. So you can see the same 3 sections that we looked at before. So before I do this, I'm just going to set the limits. So basically what these limits is is that it shows like you can change the cost of the asteroid, how many each of the vehicles can you use at max, when you first spotted the asteroid. So in the case of 2021 above at the PDC asteroid, this was 6 months. But as Artash mentioned before, that would not have been possible with a time range. So I'm going to increase this to 10 years. So I'm going to use an asteroid which had 10 years of data. And this is just showing how many max vehicles you can use and what's your max budget in billions. So I'm just going to set this and we can start. So the first thing is here. So this is the first thing that you can see is the time of deflection. So what that means is how many days before the impact do you want to send your rocket? And as you can see, you can change this based on the simulation that you want. And actually, this is similar to what we were looking at in the first section. And the second one is the transfer time. So this is how long the rocket will take to go from Earth to the asteroid. So you can also change this one. There's also different vehicles that you can use. So some examples, the Atlas, like I talked about before. So right now, for the first simulation, I'm going to use the default vehicle, so the Atlas, and I'm going to launch one of those rockets. So as you can see here, this is the amount of mass that's being delivered to the object. So around 3,000 kilograms. So now let's look at the third one. This is where we can see the asteroid. So originally, the asteroid was in where this red circle was. And now we can see that it has moved to where the green circle was. So this means that launching this rocket to impact this asteroid made the asteroid move for its impact location. But it's still inside the blue circle, which means that it will still impact the Earth. So we need to make sure that it does not impact the Earth. So to do so, we're going to change these settings to our benefit. So first, let's look at the first two, time of deflection and transfer time. So how we change these to the best? So on the bottom of this, there's something called a deflection map. So here in this map, you can see that the x-axis is the amount of days before the impact, and the y-axis is the amount of days it will take for the rocket to go to the asteroid. And as you can see, those are the same two criteria that were in the timings. So you might also notice that there's lots of different colors in this graph. And what do they signify? So the darker ones, like blue or purple, signify that this is not a good time to launch the rocket to the asteroid, while the lighter colors, like yellow, signify that it is a better time to launch the rocket. So I'm going to look for the brightest possible point. So it's around here. So here is in the x-axis around 2000 and in the y-axis around 500. So I'm going to go and close this, and then I'm going to put those same numbers into the time of deflection and the transfer time. So I'm going to change from 1000 to 2000, and I'm going to change from 400 to 500. Yeah, so as you can see, it's still showing the mass delivered to the object. Wait a second. Sorry, 1 second. And yes, so now the next thing that you can change is the rockets. So I'm just going to set this back to 2000. So in this case, we're using the Atlas rocket. So I can go ahead and change this to, for example, a Falcon Heavy. And in this case, I'm going to try with 2 of them. So I'm just going to adjust these. Wait a second. Sorry for this. I just changed timings a bit. Sorry. So instead of the Falcon Heavy, I'm going to use the NASA LSS. Sorry for this mistake. So I'm just going to use one of them. And as you can see in this third figure, sorry again for that. You can see that the green circle has been removed from this boundary. And it's gone farther away from the Earth. So now there is no impact. And so you can see that it's gone farther away. But there's more to this app. So basically, you can look at the deflection performance. So here you can see a number. Right now it's 1.178. So this is basically the ratio of the cost it takes to send these rockets and with the impact, how far away it's getting from the Earth. So let's look. So just try to improve this performance. So to do so, first, this was just a rough time of deflection and transfer time. So we can actually narrow this down. So to do so, what we can do is we can look at the mass delivered to the object, and we can try to make it the biggest possible so that it makes the most impact. So to do so, we can change the time of deflection and the transfer time. So if we put it lower, you can see that this number has slightly gone up. And if you keep on putting it lower to a certain amount, it will go down. And we can do the same thing for the transfer time. So in this case, we can make it higher. So it keeps on going. You can see the number is becoming higher and higher. And here, the next thing that we can change is the vehicles. So we can experiment with some of the vehicles, see which one works best. In this case, I'm going to use 2 Falcon Heavies. So as you can see, this number has gone up to 4.7, which means that it is better than what it was before. And as you can also see, the cost, basically what we have done is we have reduced the cost, as the SLS one was very expensive, unlike these ones. So we have improved the performance. And you can also, what you can do is you can try to keep on improving the performance by changing these parameters. So this is the end of the simulation. So I'll go back to the PowerPoint.
Now, this asteroid simulation might have been imaginary, but missions that test out the concept are not. There's a mission, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test by the European Space Agency, which aims to go and test out the effects of a kinetic impactor. In specific, this mission is targeted at the Didymos binary asteroid system, which consists of the main asteroid, Didymos, as well as its smaller moonlet. The DART mission aims to send a kinetic impactor to the moonlet of Didymos. It will impact the moonlet, and then aim to try to change its orbit around the main asteroid of Didymos. Now, this impact will only change the orbit of the moonlet around Didymos by a few minutes, but this change in orbit time is enough to be tracked from Earth. So from Earth, using telescopes, we'll be able to measure the effect of a kinetic impactor on an asteroid's moonlet. Now, thanks to Brent, we were able to have a discussion with Dr. Christina Thomas, who is the Observations Working Group Lead in the DART mission. We were able to talk to her, and she gave us a short briefing about the whole history of the DART mission. We learned several things, such as about the team behind the mission, about how they're able to observe the asteroids using light curves, how they use a variety of telescopes that are located all around the Earth, and all about the algorithms and simulations they do for this mission to work. In addition, we were able to ask her a ton of questions, and it was an interesting experience since we were able to learn so much more about the DART mission and how we can contribute. And that brings me to the fact that we will be there for the DART mission. We will use telescopes that we have access to help understand the effect of the kinetic impactor on the orbit of the moonlet around Didymos. We'll make the observations and hope to contribute to the DART project.
Yeah, this is the end of our presentation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, guys. I'm glad that there are people looking over this kind of thing, and thank you for bringing this to our attention. Let's go with questions for Arushi and Artash.
First question comes in from Enyo. Can you describe the model you used? Were there any feedback-based algorithms?
Could you repeat that actually?
Yeah, of course. Did you use any feedback-based algorithms in the model to predict the asteroid?
So this is actually a model that was made from the aerospace community. So it's not us who made the model, but it was offered by the Planetary Defense Conference.
Thank you. Blake wants to know, have you learned in your collaborations what the likelihood of an asteroid collision is in the near future, say in your lifetime?
Oh, well, right now, there's a list of asteroids being monitored by the NASA Sentry mission, which is a list of potentially hazardous asteroids, which means there's just a slight chance that they might collide with Earth. But this chance is still very small, and currently there's no asteroid that has any significant chance of impacting the Earth in the near future. But there is the Apophis asteroid, which will be making a close approach with the Earth in 2028, but it still doesn't have a high probability of impacting the Earth.
Thank you. Another question coming in from Blake. Did you say that there would be a budget limit on which rocket might be used? Why would cost be a factor?
Well, I mentioned that if there's a rocket that's going to be impacting the Earth, budget will be a secondary thing, but eventually there will still be a budget limit that we'll need, especially if this asteroid is not going to be impacting the Earth right away, or if just like the DART mission, we're doing this for just testing purposes. So, yeah.
Thank you. In the aerospace app, in the B figure in the bottom right, what do the purple circles signify?
So these purple circles are actually like the previous positions of the asteroid. So basically, like I did it a couple times with different rockets, different timings. So each of those purple circles was a different timing that I made. So this is helpful so that I can know if I made the asteroid go farther from the Earth, closer to the Earth, and so on.
Thank you so much. That's the end of the questions. Great presentation.
All right, thanks again, guys. So that concludes the speakers for this evening. Let's go to our president, Tom Luton, with the announcements.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I want to thank our presenters, and I want to thank our AV committee for another wonderful recreational astronomy night. So let's get on to the announcements. So first of all, I've got the great privilege and pleasure to announce that two of our members have earned their observing certificates. Richard Weatherston has been awarded the Explore the Moon certificate, and Frank Dempsey has been awarded the Messier certificate. These are two of the several observing certificates that are available as part of the RASC's certificate programs. We've got a number of different ones: Deep Sky Challenge objects, Finest NGC objects. If you're curious as to what's involved with these certificates, please take a look at the RASC website under certificate programs. So, as you heard earlier, this is one of two types of meetings that we have here with the Toronto Centre. This was one of our recreational astronomy nights. We also have speaker nights, which are now on hold during the summer months and will restart in September. But both of these are both of these types of meetings. We've got recordings here on our YouTube channel, so please take a look if you are interested. And if you're here for the first time watching one of our live presentations, please say hi, enter some questions for presenters. If you're a new member, please introduce yourself. And if you're coming from far, far away from outside the Toronto area, please let us know where you're from. So our next recreational astronomy night will be the July 7th at 7:30 p.m. Arnold Brody will be discussing the sky this month. John Percy will be discussing variable stars, recreation, investigation, and fascination. And then Trevor Jones will be discussing deep sky astrophotography, proven methods for better images. If you'd like to present something, please give Paul Markov a call. Over at the David Dunham Observatory, coming up on this Saturday, From 7 to 8:30 p.m., Ron McNaughton will be discussing how ancients predicted eclipses. There's a $12.50 fee for this event. You can register online. The links are found on our website at raskto.ca. On Sunday, we have Sunday stargazing. This has a $6.78 fee. And again, registry can be, links to register are found on our website. Now, our education and public outreach activities are currently, our live education public outreach activities are currently on hold due to the COVID pandemic. However, we have been and are planning virtual star parties and EPO talks with the Science Center, at Millennium Square, with the David Dunlap Observatory, the St. Clair O'Connor community, the Dunlap Institute, with Brownies, Cubs, Scouts, and school groups, and as well with our new Observers to Visual Astronomy program. If you're curious and would like more information, please contact Public Education at raskto.ca. And likewise, because of the pandemic, our live in-person observing sessions at Baby Village Park, at the Long Sault Conservation Area, and at the Ontario Science Centre are suspended until further notice. The Carr Astronomical Observatory is closed until further notice due to the pandemic. Currently, there is only maintenance activities going on the site. But even with things sort of shut down because of the pandemic, we have a real need for volunteer help. We run on volunteer energy in the center. So if you're a Toronto Centre member, if you're interested in helping out and you've got some free time, please drop our volunteer coordination team a note at volunteer@raskto.ca. Now, we've actually got a number of jobs that we're looking to fill. Our observing committee chair and committee members are looking for some new help. Our light pollution committee is looking for a chair. We're looking for national council representatives. We're looking for a marketing committee chair and committee members. Our AV committee, who's been putting together such wonderful shows as you've been watching, needs some additional help. EPO committee also would like some assistance. And for our upcoming virtual star parties, we're always looking for telescope camera operators. Again, volunteer at raskto.ca if you can help out. Some news about our upcoming Stellarium training courses, which have been ridiculously popular. We have fairly long and lengthy waiting lists for all of our courses. Our upcoming level 1 courses, the exact dates are still to be announced in June and July coming up. Excuse me. Our level 2 course on June 21st is full. Our level 3 course, which has yet to be set a date, is already full. We've also got, coming soon, a Mobile Plus course. We're pleased to announce that Kirsty Nima will be joining us as an instructor in our Stellarium training series. If you'd like to have more information and if you'd like to be added to our waiting list, please visit us at raskto.ca/content/Stellarium training series. Just a reminder that the 2021 RASC General Assembly will be June 25th to the 28th. Our keynote speaker will be Emily Calandrelli. It's $15 cost for members, $20 for non-members, and the RASC Annual General Meeting is part of the GA, and that section of the GA is free to all members. Please visit www.rask2021ga.ca for more info. This is where I get to plug membership in the RASC. If COVID has put some financial changes into your life, we do have a RASC emergency fund. It's completely confidential. You can contact Adele at the national office for information on that, or for gift memberships at mempub@rask.ca. And with that, I would like to wish you have a good night. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us. Please follow us on all various social media. If you enjoyed what you saw tonight, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to get further updates. Be safe. Keep looking up. Good night, everyone.